Hello, and welcome to Ditto's Digital Adventures. Tonight's bite-sized story for bedtime is Maisie and the Moon, written and narrated by Matthew. Maisie Robinson was lying sprawled out over her bedroom carpet, peering down furiously at her unfinished homework. She was 11 years, 9 months, 15 days, 11 hours, and 22 minutes old. Maisie liked to be precise. She was, as usual, wearing her favourite dungarees with her notebook tucked safely in the front pocket, always close at hand in case there was any vitally important science work she had to do. Maisie Robinson is an astronaut. Or at least, she will be when she's a grown-up. "Maisie!" called Aunt Sylvia from somewhere in the house.
"Where are you? It's time for bed."
"I'm up here," she called back. It was already past Maisie's bedtime, but sometimes, if she was quiet in the evening and didn't draw too much attention to herself, Aunt Sylvia would let her get away with staying up late.
"So this is where you're hiding out. I should have guessed. Are you still doing your homework, Maisie? It's too late. You won't have time to finish it before tomorrow now."
Maisie wiped her eyes. "It's extra," she said through a stifled yawn. "And it's not due till next week."
"Well, I'm glad you're doing your homework, but what would your father say to me, letting you stay up like this? It's 10:30.
Almost 3 years had gone by since Maisie moved in with Sylvia, and sometimes living with her dad seemed more like a distant dream than a memory. They would often talk about him, tell stories, remember how he was, always so silly and happy and so supportive. Sylvia said he was like that even when he was a little boy. Sometimes the two of them would stay up and talk about him for half the night. But today it was late already.
"Brush your teeth,"
said Aunt Sylvia with a sly smile. "Okay," said Maisie as a big, broad grin appeared across her face. In space, brushing your teeth is one of the few things that is actually almost the same as on Earth. The toothpaste comes in a tube, and the toothbrush is normal. All that's different is that you have to be extra careful none of the water floats away into the electrical equipment. All the same, Maisie took brushing her teeth to be another rigorous part of her astronaut training. She always went from right to left, then top to bottom. Maisie liked to be precise. "Good night, darling," said Aunt Sylvia as she flicked the lights off and Maisie climbed into bed. "Good night, Aunt Sylvia." Maisie had been tired when she was doing her homework. Maisie was tired when she was brushing her teeth. But now, as she lay in the cool darkness of her bedroom, she felt wide awake. She wasn't frightened. Maisie hadn't been frightened of the dark in years. It was more like excitement. She could lie in bed, peer into the corners of her room, and if she squinted, it seemed as though the darkness could transcend the boundaries of the wall and creep out until it contained everything. All the stars, all the planets, asteroids, and black holes all eventually sat in the corner of Maisie's bedroom. Maisie could feel herself weightlessly rising up. She moved through the shapeless black abyss soundlessly. It took her far, far away. "Where am I?" thought Maisie sometime later. "I know I'm in space, but if this is space, where's all the stuff? The planets, the stars, that stuff." The shapeless darkness of space made no reply. Instead, Maisie felt a gentle breeze against her back, the kind you might expect from a door being left ajar or a window open at night. "That's strange," thought Maisie. "There's no wind in space, so what can I feel?" It was particularly strange, come to think of it, as up until just a moment ago, it had entirely slipped Maisie's mind that she had a body at all. Maisie began to part crawl, part swim, part float through the darkness. The breeze against her was constant now, and it seemed to be pushing her away from the darkness and towards a tiny, white light that had appeared in the distance, a pinprick of silver in a sea of blackness. "Wait a minute. That's not a light. That's the moon!" cried Maisie in excitement. At first slowly, then faster and faster, Maisie hurtled towards the moon until she was moving faster than sound, faster than light, and every second the moon grew closer. "How am I going to stop?" she panicked. The moon looked hungry, and there was nothing to stop it eating Maisie. There was nothing she could do now. She was moving too fast and on a direct collision course with the gargantuan moon. Maisie screamed, covered her face, and braced for impact.
"I always forget what a wild ride it is getting here."
"You're okay." He had a warm voice, a kind voice, a familiar voice somehow. "You're okay," said the voice again, more gently this time. Maisie's arms were still wrapped around her head, but her breathing was starting to return to normal. She tentatively unwrapped her arms and was confronted by a wall of white. Maisie was floating, in perfect balance, just less than a meter off the moon's surface.
"I always forget what a wild ride it is getting here. Then again, I don't get so many visitors,"
said the man. Maisie promptly fell the final meter to the surface of the moon, and as she did, clouds of dust gently bellowed up and drifted off. The man chuckled. "Moon gravity takes a bit of getting used to, I guess," he said with a smile. Maisie peered up from her crumpled heap on the floor. Sitting just a little ahead of her, perched on a small rock, was a man in a shining white spacesuit. The visor on his helmet was dark and glossy. Behind him was a bone-white flag.
"When I got here, that flag was so colorful. All the red, white, and blue. It meant something.
Something we could all look up to and say, we did that. Only now it just looks like tighty-whities blowing in the breeze." Maisie could hardly listen. What was happening? Not 10 minutes ago she was sitting safely in her bed minding her own business. Now she was on the moon with a bump on her nose and moon dust on her pajamas. She rubbed her nose. What happened? "I was waiting for you," said the man. "For me?" asked Maisie. "Yeah, for you. You don't see anybody else here, do ya? Come with me. I've got something to show you." With the precision that only comes from years of practice, the spaceman hopped down from the rock and delicately bounced off into the distance. Maisie watched as he hopped and floated with each step before gently descending again to the moon's surface. Despite the bulk of his suit, he moved gracefully across the moon's surface. "Wait for me!" cried Maisie. But the spaceman was already speeding off into the distance. He wasn't just walking now. He was doing flips and pirouettes in the air, splits and leaps even the best ballet dancers would be envious of. Maisie scrambled to her feet in an attempt to chase after him, but found that moonwalking really did take some practice. Unlike the spaceman who bounded so effortlessly with every step, Maisie often wobbled, sometimes fell, and more than once ended up eating moon rocks. They most certainly don't taste like cheese, Maisie thought. But after a little while, Maisie did get the hang of it, and before long the two of them were bounding along together, laughing as they went. "That's it. You're a natural," said the man, and although Maisie couldn't see his face, she knew he was smiling. "So what did you want to show me?" asked Maisie. The surface of the moon was mostly flat, minus the occasional asteroid crater. But now they were approaching a long, gently sloping hill which obscured Maisie's view. "It's just up here," said the spaceman. As they came to the crest of the hill, Maisie was struck by the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Hung like a painting in the dark distance of space was the Earth. Maisie was breathless. "This is what I wanted to show you," said the spaceman. Maisie was still breathless. The image of the Earth, slowly turning, was like nothing she had ever seen. The crystal blue of the water, the dark forest green of the land, and the icy white caps of the North and South Poles. Above the Earth, the northern lights slid effortlessly across the sky, trapped in a delicate swirling dance with the Earth. "From up here I realize the Earth is so small. It's fragile. That might not be obvious to a lot of folks down there. And it's a real shame that people are fighting instead of trying to work together. We look pretty small out here in the darkness of space, don't you think? That's why I brought you here, Maisie. To show you this." Maisie looked at the Earth, and the enormity of what was just said began to sink in. All the people, all 8 billion of them living their lives, all the wonderful moments of joy and laughter. But then she thought about the other things too. The sadness, the war, the pollution, people destroying their beautiful home. In that moment, Maisie felt such a great swell of emotion, she thought she was going to cry. Not because she was sad, but because all of a sudden everything made sense. "It's up to us," said Maisie. "It's up to us to take care of each other. Not the people who came before or the people who came after us, but us, right now. We have to protect this wonderful little world of ours." "That's right, Maisie, you've got it! I'm so proud of you," said the spaceman. Suddenly Maisie felt dizzy and confused. There was something too familiar about this man, this spaceman in the gleaming white suit with the dark visor. "Thanks, Dad," she said. She didn't mean to. It slipped out, like calling the teacher Mum by accident. "Not Dad," she said, embarrassed. "I know you're not my dad. It's just—" "Maisie." The man sounded far away now, but there was so much love in his voice that Maisie wanted to stay. "Maisie. Maisie. Maisie,"
Maisie,
said Aunt Sylvia, shaking her awake.
it sounded like you were having a nightmare. Was it about your dad? Do you want to talk about it?"
Maisie sat up in bed as bright morning sunshine streamed in through the open window of her bedroom. She looked at Aunt Sylvia. "It wasn't a nightmare. It was a lovely dream. And one day, I hope it comes true." That concludes our bite-sized story for bedtime. This week was Maisie and the Moon, written and narrated by Matthew Clay. Join us again next week to see what we have in store.